Okay. Hi, my name is Andre. I am Brazilian originally. Nowadays, I live in Finland, and that's kind of like a neighbor country. Um, yeah. One thing which is nice, I drink espresso house coffee every day. It's like my favorite coffee house. I know that like it's not the best ever, but like it's sort of my favorite. And so thank you, Sweden, for that. And also, like I walked down the corridor, and on the wall there's like this thing about OP1, and I'm a proud owner of an OP1, and you don't understand, this thing is amazing. And it's also from Stockholm, so thank you, Stockholm, for that. Um, for those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, this is a synthesizer where you can make music, and it's basically a complete music box. It's not adult entertainment, it's just like music things, but it's yeah. I mean, it's not a toy for kids, but it's great. Um, Also, thank you, hosts, and it's not that nice that Google Chrome is now going to have a ad blocker embedded. So, not nice, Google, but yeah. So, what does this talk about? What is Cycle.js? It's a framework for JavaScript. Oh yeah, this talk is basically a frequently asked questions, just giving the answer. So it's a JavaScript framework. Okay, we have many of those in the world. Why are you presenting yet another one? What makes a difference from the other frameworks is that we talk about data flow in like Redux and Flux. So in Cycle.js we got this idea of data flow, and we're like pretty serious about it. And basically what it means is that you just write functions, and those functions will take streams as input, and they're going to output streams. That's kind of basically what it is. And before I show you any code, what it's really about is this type of diagram, where you have data flowing. So basically, data starts from the top. You basically get events from the DOM, and it flows down like, this decrement button will have a decrement click stream, and then data just flows from top to bottom. That's it. And you see those dashed lines? That's basically your input, and dashed line at the bottom is your output. So you get your program is a function that takes that thing as an input, makes this data flow, and returns a stream as an output. So that's important to know before I show any code. Now, what does it look like in code? What we're trying to do in code is build that diagram that I just showed to you. So basically, there we go. We're like, okay, from the DOM, I want click events happening on decrement, like class, some element that has decrement or increment here. That's one type of event. And then basically, I can sort of reduce those things over time, starting from 0, and then I map that counter thing to this virtual DOM thing, and that's my output, and the program will basically work. Now, one of the biggest things that you probably notice now here is that we don't have such thing as like on click of this element do this. Now, this is very fundamental, and we like long time ago when we were designing Cycle as a community, we decided that yeah, we're gonna do this way instead. And that was like a very fundamental and very important change for us, because that allows everything to come from the top and then flow down to the bottom. Without that, what you have is just, you have this thing that will like flow to itself, kind of, and you kind of lose these properties of data flow. And now I know that like most people, when they look at code like this, they will focus on like the superficial things, like let's say there's no JSX here and that type of stuff. But just bear with me for a moment. What this means is that from that code that I showed you, we have our dev tools, and our dev tools show this diagram. So the diagram will show you the data flowing. So you have the event on the increment, and then you're going to literally see it going like blue, 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 and going all the way down. I could actually demo this, but no. Too lazy. So next question, where's my JSX? People ask immediately when they see that code, I want my JSX. Yeah, we support JSX. It's okay, you can use it. It's just that it's just a superficial topic, and we don't need to discuss it so much, like, people don't really get stuck with this issue when they're doing Cycle. They can use JSX or they can use this. The reason why it's like originally like this is that, you know, we're not actually creating elements here. We're creating a virtual DOM, so it kind of matches that you use a function to get a description of the DOM, but it's just superficial preference. Yeah, so there go your JSX. And another superficial thing that people see is that, whoa, like class name selectors. That's jQuery, right? So that type of stuff that we did here, you know, I want to select that element and I want to get clicks. So that looks like jQuery. But don't worry, you know, this doesn't have the same type of problems that we have in jQuery, for instance, because there, you know, when you do dot decrement select, then you can select everything that has that decrement class, and that's not so nice. But with Cycle.js, we have this thing called isolation, which means that if you have a subcomponent and that subcomponent says dot select decrement, it will only select the decrement that it itself created. So the parent that contains it, when it does select the decrement, it's not going to look for inside the child. So we don't have that type of problem. And then we don't really have clashes with like style classes, because you can use something like these modern CSS and JS, such as type style is a good one, where basically you will like just the library will generate to you some kind of hash class name. So it's going to be something like red button F0C12, and that's going to be your styles, and you're not really going to select that here. So the way that we typically do is that we just put class names for everything that we produce, so that basically the class names here are just giving semantics. So otherwise, you know, I would just have a button, and the button has some text content, but if I put the class there, I'm giving the semantics to this button. And what else was I going to say? I was going to say something else. Oh yeah, and that's also pretty cool, because it means that this part is related to view. Okay, now I know that view is like a very overused word, but it means that here we're only concerned about how are we going to show this on the screen. That's it. And this part is like, what happens when the user tries to touch the screen or do something with the screen, right? There's two different concerns there, and it allows you to basically refactor stuff quite easily. Like if you want to change, you know, instead of the user clicking on something, he's going to hover, then you will change this part related to interaction. You're not going to change how the thing looks like, you see? So we get this pretty good separation of concerns. So yeah, if you don't like this type of selection stuff, I'm sorry, it's very fundamental in Cycle.js, and it's very important, and we actually really like it. And actually, once people start using it, you know, this is not what they really focus on as problems. We have different type of problems, and we talk about those different type of problems, and this is basically not a problem for us. Okay, so would you use Cycle.js in every web app? So someone asked me once, like, don't you get tired of like thinking with this thing? And you know, nowadays, like, this is how I think about UIs, and it's basically asking Swedish people, like, hey, don't you get tired of speaking Swedish? You know, like it's something natural in you. So you're, of course, like you're gonna choose it by default if you wanna, you know, use some language. So the same thing, and like, yes, it works for any kind of web app. So you know, you can build any kind of web app with React. You can build any kind of web app with Angular, or with, like, let's say Polymer, or I think YouTube was written with Polymer. Correct me if I'm wrong. So yeah, you can use Cycle.js to build any kind of web app. So yeah, can I use React with Cycle.js? Basically, this is a hard question, because originally it's like no, and then it was yes, and then no, and then yes, and then no. So that's actually wrong. So basically, like, originally when I set out to build this framework, I thought, can I use React? And you know, try to think how world was back then. Okay, React was only based on the objects, not the ES6 classes. So it's like object, create class, and then there was also like React IDs in the middle of all this stuff, and it was always create class. We didn't have functional components in React. So for a person who just discovered functional programming and reactive programming, and I would see React and seeing that API plus the fact that it's a bit big and it's not the fastest virtual DOM, we just chose to use smaller and faster virtual DOM libraries. But then you can use React with web components. People have done that. And so that's the yes part. But then on the other hand, web components and React are not in the best situation currently. So like one of the things I did is open an issue with React, and like a very polite issue saying like, hey guys, I'm thinking, what if I could do this as a PR for you, and then we could get like React working quite nicely with web components. And I opened that in October last year, and it's still ongoing. There's a lot of discussions there. It's very tricky, because Facebook won't build, Facebook company won't build Facebook site with web components, and that's totally understandable because they need to get everything custom. So they're a bit reluctant in like having web components there. But web components are super important because it means that, what if Vue.js starts being the thing? And then how can I use Vue.js and da. And it's like, all over again. We have the solution already, right? Like, we're not going to make date picker in like Vue, date picker in Jquery, date picker in React. What's the point of that, right? It's just nicer that you just use a date picker. Whatever is underlying, you don't want to know. So that's the no part because React doesn't. But then yes, again, because nowadays I am putting React native with Cycle.js. So that means that, all of the effort that I'm doing with React Native, I could do also for React. So that's kind of like a yes. But then it's no, because it's not like you can install it today and use it. So it's a very complicated question, but people make this question. So can you use React Native? Yes. Yeah, this is the package JSON for an actual project that I'm doing. You install their React and React Native. And then we have these things called drivers. And we have this driver called native screen. And we have a driver for native toast, a native keyboard. And maybe I can get ahead of myself, but the point here is that all of those APIs that React Native has, such as, keyboard and all of those stuff, they are actually, they don't really fit in the component architecture of React, right? If you notice, they're just like a static thing that you use, such as toast is one of them, keyboard is another. So, but here with Cycle.js, we can make components, okay, the idea of a component that only deals with Android toast. Oh, if you don't know what a toast is, it's basically, you have your Android phone, it's like a pop-up, just a small black thing in the corner. So you could make a component of toasts only, not anything related to DOM and that type of stuff. So that's why we have all these kind of different things. Yeah, so this is a little bit of an example. This is like the index.android.js. And there we have a toast driver. And we have also like a screen. Screen is everything sort of DOM looking. We try to come up with a good name, ask the community, and we settled on screen. Everything that interacts with the screen or shows stuff on the screen. And then let's see. So basically with Cycle.js, you say, I want to run this program. And this program, this main, is a function that will take all that data flow stuff. And but here we're setting up, where our our inputs are going to come from. We're going to have inputs from the screen, and we're going to have outputs to the screen. That type of stuff. So let me show you how main is the function. This is our program. This is our program. And as you can see, it's a function that takes stuff from sources, or basically things that are coming from the screen or coming from toast or coming from the database. And if you're wondering what is Onionify, it's kind of like one of the solutions for state management that we have. So it's kind of like Redux, you could say. So then what does a component look like? This is an example of a component that I have called dial. Index.js will have basically the function for this component. Intent will handle interaction. Model will handle state management. styles is styles, and view will handle the rendering to the screen. So just to give you an example, like here back in the counter application, this would be intent because we're handling user interaction. This would be model because we're handling state, and this would be view. And it's pretty simple, just like get this part, put over there, you know, and there you go. You know, it's pretty easy to slice these things and just put them in places. So what does the index looks like? You know, this part looks pretty much like the main function, and that's also something interesting, is that every cycle application is a component. So you use applications inside applications inside applications, and that's our idea of component. But when I say component, I don't mean a string inside two angle brackets. I mean an idea of something that you can compose with other stuff. Yeah, so for instance here we handle interactions from the screen. We get actions, kind of like Redux actions. And then state, we kind of get it from global state, you know, you see, we're getting state from the input. From our actions, we make reducers. That's our model. From our state, we make virtual DOM. And then we put the virtual DOM on the screen, and we put our reducers to our store. See? So then, how to handle interactions, you know, I select something, and then I want events of type press, and so forth. Those, you know, this is now an action. It's a stream of stuff that happens. Our actions don't need to have type and payload. We used that for a while, but now I'm like, well, there's no point in doing that. Our model, try to ignore this part a little bit because it's about composing the state with the bigger component. Let's go here. So this is nice because you get an action and you map that action to a reducer. And a reducer in our case is just a function from previous state to new state, as you can see. Yeah, and so like for instance, here's an action of please insert a digit, and we map that digit that we got to a function. This is our reducer, and that's it. So also to set our initial state, we have this reducer of initial state, which is basically like, given previous state, I don't care what it was, let's pretend that there was nothing, I will return this. So it's a bit different from Redux because you don't like set it in a totally different place, but you have a reducer for initial state. I don't want to overwhelm you with this. Styles, actually here we use styled components because we're using React Native. We can use styled components, and you know, I'm not going to give a talk on styled components. And view, you just get the state. Oh, here are all our styled components. Maybe I don't have the best organization of this style components yet, but yeah. So pretty simple, like you get state and you make, yeah, come on, you know. So next question, how do I integrate with existing libraries like Jquery Plug-In? Pretty normal, like in React we have lifecycle hooks. We also have hooks in our sort of virtual DOM library. For instance, like there's actually a lot of hooks different to React, I think, and I think the names are nice because they make sense. Yeah, so, and with this, it's basically like I'm going to attach on this virtual DOM object this function that will run on that case, and then you can do all kinds of things. It's going to give you the like this is the virtual DOM node, and then from that you can get the element, and you can do whatever you want, and things work. So yeah, you can integrate whatever libraries you need with Cycle.js. Am I going too fast or too slow? Okay. How's the performance? This is fun because so I didn't do any performance benchmarks, but other people did, and this is pretty thorough. They have, this is not the latest stuff, but so some time ago we were just building the API for Cycle.js because we weren't sure about the architecture, so we just did all kinds of crazy experimentations, and it turned out that Yep, like 16 is like the worst here. But the cool thing is that we did you know make it work, make it right, make it fast. So then after we made it work and right, we made it fast. And it's like 1.78 overall. And what was this? Ah, so Angular, so it's like a little bit faster than Angular 1 and 2. It's basically in the league of the fastest. Here we have Inferno and Plastic, which are quite hard to compete with. And Preact, also basically the same thing as Cycle. A little bit faster than Cycle. These are outdated. I think someone made some newer one, but what we don't like to focus so much on this like micro performance benchmarks, and most of this performance comes out of SnapDOM, which is very small and very fast, and another stream library which I made called Extreme, which is very small and quite fast. So performance is okay, basically. How is testing? And this is so nice because Nick made it, and Nick is sitting over there. Nick is so nice. So this is so nice that you don't know what this is. It's so nice. No, okay, let's go step by step. What we're gonna do, because the program is just a function, okay? We can give fake inputs, and that's what we're doing. So see, this is our program counter. See, and there I'm giving this thing called DOM, which is the DOM source. And as you can see, it's fake, so it's mock DOM source. So there I'm saying, hey, here's a stream that is kind of fake, which represents clicks. And as you can see, we build that stream of clicks from a ASCII diagram, which represents time. So basically, we are simulating time that, I clicked add, subtract, add. And then I want to check, this is my expected output, that it was 0, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And, this will give me a stream of numbers, but then I'm mapping each of those numbers to an HTML. Is it too confusing? So what this basically means is that, imagine that I click 2 times and subtract 1 time. I want my HTML to look like this over time, where it shows 0 inside this HTML, and then it shows 1 inside this HTML, and then it shows 2, and then it shows 1, and then it shows 2. And all of this was like fake inputs. I don't have the DOM here. And then I just say, run this thing, and it's going to simulate time. It's not going to actually run this with real set intervals. So this test will run like this. And you're done. Yeah, so that's how nice testing is. And all of this was CPU and RAM. You didn't need to have any kind of thing with the DOM. Of course, you want to do integration tests. You can do that. But the point here is that you can test only logic, because we put out all of the interfacing stuff with external world as inputs. So that's how nice testing is. And also, Jan is going to give a talk about how you can use generative testing together with all this. It's just crazy. So yeah, is it popular? I don't know. It's it's probably 500 times smaller than React, because our community in the chat has 1,000 people, and React Dev Tool downloaders are 500,000, I think. So it's like probably 500 times smaller than React. But in the state of JavaScript 2016, after they talked about all the popular frameworks like React and Angular and etc., there are other front-end frameworks, and this is how much people mention Cycle.js, like more than Jquery, more than Polymer. Sorry, Google, more than Elm. Like, I don't believe this, but it's there, so I hope it's true. So yeah, I don't know. Like, it's nice. How's the community? Oh, the community is so nice. Seriously, and it's basically Nick and Raquel do a huge difference. So Nick just started a thread here, like, hey, introduce yourself. where do you live? What do you like? Do you like dogs? And you know, everyone is just telling how their life is. Everyone is hearting each other. It's just so nice. Yeah, the community is nice. I hope. Yes. Is it production ready? This is like a question which is super subjective, you know? Super subjective. How do you say that what is the definition of something that's production ready? I don't think JavaScript is production ready. Seriously. Like you still get undefined in a bunch of websites. How can that? Yeah. So it's a subjective question. Um, so one of the things that you can be sure is that there are people using it in production. Okay, I have used it in one or two customer projects. There's Danske Bank last year in CycleConf. They just started their new project with 14 front-end developers, and they're all using Cycle.js. That's something. So it's not production ready. We need to talk about it. Yeah. Well, maybe I don't know. But what really matters when you're adopting something is, can you dig into the library code, right? Because if things go bad, can you go inside? Can you do it yourself? And like Redux was not battle tested, okay? So when they went down a remote launch Redux, it was basically like, hey people, I want to show you how functional programming is nice, but by the way, I had to write this library. And then he wrote the library, and then after 2 weeks, a lot of people started using it, and suddenly it's battle tested. Like, explain to me how that works. So, I don't know. It's very subjective question, but I would say people are using it in production, and it works. What also matters is that the architecture makes sense in a team. And I think this is a big plus of Cycle.js, because you can have components of things that are not like DOM related. So, for instance, in React, if you need to interact with, like, let's say React Native, where you have Toast and all of these different APIs that are not DOM related, or whatever you call it, screen related, where do you put those? Just put them in some kind of component lifecycle hook, and then suddenly you have a bunch of stuff. Right? What is the architecture for that? We don't really have good answers, but I think Cycle.js provides one of that type of answers. So, in architecture-wise, I think it would make sense for a team. No, now I'm talking about Redux, for instance. Or if you just make a React project, you don't just have React, right? You have React plus something else. Yeah. Yeah. Well, so as you see that blank thing, it's basically your questions now, so you already started. Yeah, that's good. So what I meant is that there's not a good consensus in what to do with those type of effects in the React community. And React, to be honest, is half of a framework. Because if you look at React Native, it doesn't just do things related to the screen. It does a lot of other things like polyfilling and all kinds of, native APIs, and it's just definitely not screen related only. So the question is where do we put those stuff? And at least we found an answer, like a consensus type of answer, and I think the React and Redux community is still figuring that out. There's of course middlewares, but we have war stories about that. This is not a criticism to React. It's basically we have figured an architecture for that type of effects. Okay. We're not using the shadow DOM, and we're not using web components yet. We wanted to do a helper so that you can get a cycle component and make a web component. And actually, I started making this helper that you get a cycle component and you convert that to a React component, and that's kind of new thing. But for isolation of stuff, we have our own idea of isolation. We have this thing called cycle isolate, and you basically say, you know, this function will run in that scope, that function will run in this scope, that type of stuff. Any other questions? Yep. Yeah, we have just like we have these drivers. We have an HTTP driver, which is based on XHR, not fetch, so that we support cancellation. It's actually based on super agent, so we didn't build like a lot of stuff. And yeah, we basically get a stream of responses, and we output a stream of requests. Kind of sounds inverted, but when you think of data flow, like you get data from above and you send data down. Yeah, we have. I don't think we have an official WebSocket thing, but yeah, it should be fairly easy to build. Any other questions? Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of similarities between Cycle and Elm, in the sense of data flow. Like, but Elm is quite limited. Apparently, Elm is a bit more focused. Let's say, it's focused on like basically. It has like a very strict architecture for model and effects. Yeah, and you can't like do everything, I think. Like server-side rendering is still an issue, but some Noah from Elm community did something about that. I don't know. There's some ideas that are similar, but Elm used to have signals, which are kind of like streams, and then they dropped it. Yeah, they just hit it. Yeah, but they dropped it from the interface. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we can talk about that, but any other questions? Yeah, I tried to use other libraries because, yeah, just to save effort. So Snapdom, for instance, was made in Denmark, not Sweden, sorry. It's very good virtual DOM library, very fast. We use that, and then for HTTP we use Super Agent. For our stream libraries we used to use RxJS, and then I just decided to build a dedicated stream library called Xstream. But yeah, as much as we can, we try to use stuff that are out there. Any other questions? Yeah, so my inspiration is basically I learned RxJS, and I got this idea of data flow. I understood this type of graph, and I thought like this is the thing, you know. And then I thought, how can I use this as much as possible and like push all the other things away? And then I ended up getting to this. In the CycleConf, I'm gonna give this talk where I explain the whole story. Like basically, it would not have been at all what it is today without the community, because as soon as I launched it, I got a lot of feedback. Not nice feedback. just like, why are you doing this? And I was like, why am I doing that? And it took like a year or something, and then we did all kinds of ideas. Isolation is not even my idea, and a ton of ideas are not mine. So we just did a lot of iterations. Yeah. I was probably just stupid. Oh yeah, I mean, I wrote initially this introduction to RxJS, and that kind of went viral. Still, people think it's a really good introduction. I think I did better introductions after that. But then I wrote Rx Marbles. So before I did Cycle.js, I was already kind of involved and stuff like that. Yeah. Good question.